Okay, hi everyone. This is a conversation for installment 3 of Journey Secrets. Is that right? No, installment 2 of Journey Secrets, chapters 8 to 14, and also Proverbs, installment 9, which is a whole bunch of very interesting people. So welcome, Judy and Jude, and we'll see Irene is here. Hi, Irene. Hope we can see you today. You're muted. I can't hear you if you're talking. Oh, there's Lorraine. Hi, Irene. We can see you again. That's great. We can still see you.
Yes.
Oh, nice. How lovely. It's working for you. That's great. Hi, Lorraine.
Morning, everyone.
Hi. A bit early for you, huh? Welcome, everybody. So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Secrets is a very, very interesting installment. There's some interesting proverbs, and I'll just turn it over to you guys. Go.
I just want to say it was really nice that you got acknowledged in the last email from Rick, that and Rick got acknowledged as well, because it really is. I don't think any of us really realize how much work it is to put all of this together.
It is a lot of work, and it's certainly been something that we've just done, and it feels like it's drawing to a close, you know? So we'll see how it goes. But yes, it was unexpected and appreciated. Yes, very much.
Good.
Very much. Thank you.
Well,
So-
if we're gonna jump right in, Lorraine and I had a bit of a chat yesterday regarding these next chapters, and I think we just left it that, well, you know, we're never going to understand all this, but I just had I don't know if maybe somebody could help if they understand it differently than I did.
Mhm.
My main question that I had was in chapter 9. I think it's, yeah, when it talks about these different types of energy.
Yeah.
Potential energy, there's potential energy, there's source energy, and then that's different from pure energy. If somebody maybe could give me a different way of looking, because I'm very confused about all these three, especially these three, because I don't understand what pure energy is as opposed to potential and source.
Okay, well, I'm not saying I fully understand it, but I'm going to try. And in fact, as I've been looking at these chapters, you know, it's sort of interesting. Preparing them to present them, I don't get a chance to really absorb them the way you guys do. So I've just been doing that today, which is a bit late into the game. I kind of have, but I haven't. So let's separate two things. First of all, there's things that can be explained through physics, which are now in form, vibrational form. And then there are things that are more in the unseen realm, which science doesn't look at, okay? So if I was to keep these two buckets, I would put potential energy and kinetic energy into the physics bucket. They are science, they're physics, they're measurable. Potential energy, I did physics in high school. And yes, we study and calculate potential energy, kinetic energy, blah, blah, blah. Don't ask me to remember and explain anymore. And then the other bucket is spiritual, and different pathways use different words. We happen to use source energy, which is like the source, you know, I'm not going to add words to confuse it. And pure energy, which I think the secret says is vibrating at the same frequency as the Godhead, which is a piece of the source. I mean, sources can break up into pieces and then can return there. So that is not something that's a concept that can be measured. So if you're trying to understand it in that way, we're not going to. So does that begin to at least put it in two ways of looking at it?
Well, that just opens up a whole bunch of other questions.
Yes, keep going. Keep going. Let's do it.
Because if you like, I wrote down, how does potential in chapter 7, potential and energy, how does, if this is something within the realm of physics, how does potential energy start to think and create?
Well, that is the whole purpose of A Course in Miracles, The Course of Love, and A Journey into the Unknown. I mean, that's, so those things, I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
now you're using the words a little differently though. When I use potential energy and kinetic energy in physics, think of a runner perched on the starting block. Okay?
yeah. Okay, I got that.
That is
Okay.
full of potential energy.
Right.
What makes them move? Well, that is the quintessential question, isn't it? Because medical science will give you all the mechanisms of brain and body and bones and muscles that make that body shoot off at a high speed, high speed, but they don't know what initiates that
Okay.
decider. You see, that's what medical science has never done. So that's why it's in the spiritual realm. So, we can't answer that question here.
Okay.
But can you see the difference between potential
Yeah.
energy coiled up in the body
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then boom, kinetic energy?
But then how, okay, if that's the case, then that potential energy goes into the other bucket then. When it starts to think and create, it goes into your other bucket. Does it not then?
I've got in trouble now with buckets because it is. No, I can't answer that question. We'll all have to hang out with it and come back around. Let's move on to something let's see if anybody else has a question and see.
Okay.
Lorraine, maybe you can ask something that adds another perspective. Or Irene or Judy. But again, remember, we're kind of source. We are all droplets of source energy, if you like, right? So maybe I'll say one more thing. Lorraine, I'm sorry. Let me just
Go ahead.
One more thing, which I remember reading in here and thinking, okay, I don't fully get this, but frequency and vibration are different. Frequency is, we are that frequency of whatever, we are. But vibration is when frequency animates form, it vibrates.
Okay.
See, so there's that aspect of it too. So I think, let me see if we can find the bit where it says about when energy reaches a certain vibration. Is that in chapter 7? Is that where you guys were looking? Let's take a moment to look. It's not gonna hurt to actually get the sentence that.
Well, it talks about as soon as potential energy began to think and create, becoming
What chapter is that, Judy?
Oh, that's chapter 7, number 4.
Chapter 7, number 4. Potential energy. Okay, as soon as potential energy began to think and create, becoming what is known as I am energy, there was in fact an explosion. Okay, so in this chapter, they're using potential and kinetic in the original sense. But I'm still saying that it is that cycle between, resting and replenishing and movement. So yeah, how does it begin to think and create? Well, good question. You are potential energy. I am potential energy. How do we begin to think and create is the entire purpose to me of the whole journey. How do we create? But I just don't know. I don't know. Lorraine, sorry. Go ahead.
I listened to a meditation this morning where it said that conscious awareness is the catalyst for potential for creation. So when we become aware, is when God could think a thought about itself, then he could create.
Right.
So it's conscious awareness that is the catalyst.
Yes, that's perfect, because A Course in Miracles is for Christ awareness.
Yes.
The Course of Love came for Christ consciousness. And A Journey into the Unknown has come for Christ manifestation or Christ transformation. Both those phrases are used. So that's perfect. Perfect.
So
Thank
that helped me a lot, just that this morning, because Judy was asking me same questions. But I will share a little bit.
Please.
When I saw Angela briefly last night, she said, "Wow, Mom, did you read the readings?" And of course I had. And I probably started talking about energy. She said, "Mom, don't go there with me." She said, "That's too deep." She said, "I have in my head an idea." She said, "I've created this circle, the alpha and the omega. The beginning is the ending, or the ending is the beginning. There's no endings. There are always new beginnings." So she said, it's like the chicken or the egg, what comes first. But I don't think yet. And like I said to Judy last night, we still have 31 chapters to go. There's 40 chapters. So we're just starting to get this, and it will become, we'll integrate it. It'll become more understandable as we go along. So in that very broad brush stroke of understanding, we can see that there's cycles of stillness or dormancy, and cycles of activity or creation. And it would seem as in time that one follows the other, right? And if we haven't, like the different types of energy, the potential energy, the kinetic is the being, is the potential, the doing is the kinetic. And we, in doing Course of Journey, see that we are both being and doing at once. Is it simultaneous or is it sequential? You know, those things, we often hear that everything is happening at once. We're living in all our dimensions at once. We're multi-dimensional beings, and it's all happening at once. My experience right now in this moment is a human experience, right? But at the same time, I'm experiencing more and more as a soul, a spirit. I think I'm seeing more things are falling away that are more material. Maybe not falling away so much as transforming, so that I'm seeing them differently. I'm seeing them in a different light from the perspective of love. Right. And so Judy and I, she said, well, what's the difference between potential energy, kinetic energy, and pure energy? Because it does say that, this is interesting. Okay. So over the past creation cycles and rest cycles, which I just referred to, dormant cycles or active cycles, God has multiplied itself with new aspects of Godheads. That's still not straight in my mind, as Godheads are separate from me, but there's no separation. So I just an aspect of a Godhead, and Godheads are aspects of a higher source. It does talk about going from lower to higher, and internal to external. But like you say, can't bog our pea brains and that stuff. Okay, so
Lorraine, could you just read the sentence that you're talking
yes,
about?
okay. Sorry. So
That's okay.
over the past creation cycles and rest cycles,
Mhm.
God has multiplied itself with new aspects or Godheads. But what happens to all of the energy, that animated form, directly or indirectly during a creation cycle?
Mhm.
This is interesting because this involves you. This energy keeps getting recycled over and over and again until it has reached a point when it vibrates at the same level as the Godhead. When this happens, it rejoins source and is indistinguishable from it. It has lost all sense of individuality and differentiation. And I think that's where Judy was struggling So what's that
And,
pure
and
energy?
just to read the sentence in the next verse to complete it.
Yeah,
This has
yes,
happened very rarely.
rarely.
So if we are trying to understand that, it's going to be impossible. So we have to go in and just let it be and know that we are on this cyclical journey. You've explained it very well, Lorraine. Thank you. Creation cycles, endless cycles. Angela's talking about Alpha and Omega is another way to think about it. They are endless. They're cycles within cycles within cycles, or, you know.
And you would
we don't have to think about, well,
No.
where's the end point, because it is so beyond. We just
absolutely.
know we're on a journey. So.
And just to expand a little on the circle that Angela envisions, Christina, you would probably say it's a spiral. So when the beginning gets to the end, it's a new spiral circle.
It's
and we
moving
keep
in multi-dimensions.
Yeah.
And I can only draw it in 3 because that's all we are, but we know there's beyond. So.
Right. And I think too, like what you're saying, Christina, we're not going to understand all this, but it resonates. We know it's true. We can relate that, wow, you know, this is being revealed to us, even though we don't fully understand it, but we know it's truth coming from truth, right?
Right. You know, as you're talking, I felt so good that the timing of offering Journey Secrets is now. After so many weeks of Journey Proverbs, conditioning and softening us into dissolving the separation between seen and unseen, because now we're getting to sort of step back and look at that picture. You know, it's a much larger thing. And I know we're not talking about arrival here, but I want to say that this book will illuminate some of the things being said in that. Bye, Judy. Judy, oh, she's still there.
As I explain it to myself,
We lost you this second. Go ahead, Irene.
as I explain it to myself as thought, energy, and experience. And I think for myself, it gets explained in the experience. Right now, like for instance, you know, these conversations are an experience, and how how I am functioning in the world is my experience of of my better self. And I'm you know, I read books that give examples of, and I like to give examples of in my daily good thought thing that I send out. You know, tell a story of how something works out for its best. The experience of it is telling the story so that we understand what we're doing that gets us into in a line with the truth of our being. To me, I can't make it confusing and understand it. So I just explain it to myself in simplistic terms. There's thinking about all the good things, and then there's acting them out, or, you know, how are they playing out in my world? How I treat people and so forth.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. Yeah. I mean, as where Lorraine was reading from, I think that's where the next paragraph talks about that there is no record, and all the records are meticulously detailed, of any amount of energy that's left the Godhead that hasn't returned some degree of interest. Some degree of increase of love is what they're talking about. And the example given is Lizzie Borden, which is pretty funny, which is why I picked that image. That even Lizzie Borden, you know, one time would have held the door open for her parents. She did love them, even though she later chopped their heads off. So, you know, Irene, what you're really saying is that we're not going to be able to get the whole picture. We'll just get confused. But what is important is what we're living. And what it's saying is that every drop of love however tiny, that we choose for and live, embody and live. It's not about thinking, it is about thinking, but actually living it, bringing it down is critical. It is so essentially important and is the purpose of this existence.
I feel that's why we're on Earth.
Yes.
I mean, we could be on any other planet or any other place, but we're here to experience the best of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I think that's really important because it points out there is a best of ourselves.
Yeah, which is that eventual point of pure energy, I guess. But there's always a
Yes.
harvest. That's what they talk about. So how about we look at the next chapter, because this is on 9. We have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And while we hold this anchor of knowing that the purpose of all of this is to embody and live love, which is what this is all about, blessing indiscriminately and loving unconditionally. Let's hold that as the container. And yes, let's explore with the mind questions that have come up as we've read the rest of the chapters. That'd be a good thing to do because there's a lot there.
Mm.
Yeah, and it will help everyone who'll be watching videos later also. So we were on 9. I believe the next chapter is about what is a Godhead. How fascinating. What is a Godhead? God extends itself inside itself, not outside itself. That's why the concept of God, traditional concept of God, is so flawed.
You still have your salad.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi,
Hi, everybody. Sorry, don't mean to interrupt.
that's okay. That's okay.
Every day.
And then, so this is basically very simply telling us that everything resides within God. There is no outside. There is no outside. And so the challenge for me, is still continuing to be bringing everything together. What one might call good, bad, ugly, it's all together within. So any questions on that particular, any questions at all? We don't have to go chapter by chapter. I'll keep quiet and you guys talk.
It does say that God is continually adding dimensions to itself. That's creation. And Irene, your point of we are here, we chose to be here. We chose to come to this planet and we chose to have this experience. So to me, it's obvious that this was the best choice to bring out the best or the love, the truth of what I am. And so the dimensions, I think it says maybe a little later that the dimensions, it says somewhere, maybe in the first.
Well, in this chapter, it talks about there's no point talking to a human being about more than the 5th dimension. I mean, we really can't grasp it at all.
That's exactly where I
Yeah,
was going,
yeah,
Christina.
yeah, yeah.
So end of conversation there, but it's right there. I just didn't go far enough. Yeah.
Right. And so again, this is a place where we're not going to be able to explain it, but just the notion of there being multiple dimensions and that we, because we're inside of God also, are expanding in every dimension all the time. And through every choice for love and blessing and self as well as everyone is amazing when you think about that. That is amazing. And on the dimensions thing, there is actually a video of Carl Sagan. Do you remember him, the astrophysicist?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He actually has done a video. It was a long time ago. It's a very fuzzy old video where he explains the 4th dimension. Now, in his way, in the physics way, astrophysics way, because people use 4th dimension and call it time. Some use it as this in between, time and place. But the way he does it, and if you guys are interested, I will send that video because he basically starts from the dot and then the line, 2-dimensional, and then he draws a square And then he brings it into the cube, which is 3 dimensions. And then he says, well, I can't now show you an object of 4 dimensions, a 4-dimensional object, but he shows you can show the shadow of it. Because the shadow of a cube you can draw mathematically. You draw a square, then you draw diagonal lines, and then you connect them up, and you have a 3-dimensional cube drawn on a 2-dimensional piece of paper, right? That can be done. So you can think of that as the shadow of the cube with a light shining on it, flat. So a 3D shadow, light can show you a 2D shadow. So he does actually show you what the mathematical drawing, oh no, not mathematical drawing, it shows you a 3D object that is the shadow of a 4D object, which he can't show you. Do you see what I'm saying? A 3-dimensional object can be represented in the lower dimension. So he was able to represent the 4th-dimensional object in 3 dimensions and show that to us. So I hope I haven't confused you, but I can send you that.
No, and where does it says in one of these chapters that the dimension we have been in illustrates, we have only been able to demonstrate the ego mind. It doesn't use the word ego, whereas in the next dimension, we will be demonstrating the spirit mind or the spirit. It's where does it just read that? Let's see briefly. Because I said to Judy last night, well, okay, then tell me, what is the difference between 3D, if we came here to accomplish that dimension, and 5D? And it's answered for me somewhere here. See if I can find that. There's so much. And on chapter 11 too, Christina, it continues to try and give us, to explain Godheads, how they're symbiotic, how they create worldscapes. But I wish I could find.
Godheads are symbiotic. Keep looking, I'll read a little bit from here. Godheads are symbiotic. They share information with one another. They relate to each other. No one knows how many there are, I'm paraphrasing. But the patterns and structures are all the same. They create in the same ways and use the same methodologies. There are realities that exist in one Godhead and not another. And there are duplicate realities in more than one Godhead, with some type of unexpected twist. I love this paragraph. I read it to my granddaughters. They loved it. For example, in your reality, you all know what a grizzly bear looks like. There is at least one reality where a grizzly bear head would be on a zebra, and vice versa. Or there could be a play on animal nature. Instead of a tiger being a feared predator, in one reality, it may be completely playful and docile, and every child would want one as a pet. But the common fly would be something to watch out for. They loved that. So I think all it's saying is, if you can think it exists in some reality somewhere. So it's a lot. Yeah, it's really a lot. And I guess if it was going to be easy to understand, we would all have understood this a long time ago. It would just be so clear. Science would have explained it all, and we wouldn't be sitting here. But that's what a journey into the unknown is all about, getting a taste of things that I guess it's given as a sort of a context, for everything that is happening and is going to happen, and to really dissolve any fear about it. That's what this is all about, really to increase the love and dissolve the fear. And in the Christs, as we are called, we're going to be needed to walk that path in the world without fear.
My thought, as I say, I like to do things simplistically. So my thought about this is that Earth experience is the show and tell, except it's the reverse. It's the tell and show. some people, I think, get the whole picture by just talking about it, by just telling it. And other people need the show part,
Mhm.
need the experience, the the story, the playing out of the thing so that they understand how it works.
Mhm.
This
Yes.
person says this, and then I respond in a loving way like this.
Yes.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
just to tell it without an experience of how it played out,
Mhm.
people, maybe some get it that way. They go, oh, I understand it completely. And others need the we call it show and tell.
Right.
But I think tell that we were told first, and I don't know. But show, oh, I get it now. So
Mhm.
I think that Earth plane reality, and maybe it's 3 or 4, is on the show part.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I think, all of it's important. And for me, I do a lot of the show part.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I see, because I see in pictures. So
Mhm.
I see the story in a picture,
Right.
and
Right.
then I write it up
Yeah.
and tell it to people. And then the people who don't need that, don't need that.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I'm going to add to your show, Irene, the grow, because that's the purpose, is to grow the love. You show the love and experience in life choices and living and relationships with people, and your good thoughts that you send out, you're doing it. And then that grows the love. And that's what this is about, growing, expanding the energy. And yeah. And for me, it's like I have to immediately live it. If I read something, it's like, okay, how does this apply? So this book was sort of interesting because it doesn't really apply immediately, but it gives a context for it. So I've been more, as we talk, going into my thinking mind, and what's been landing is that I could probably start sketching some pictures, because I've always been very good at drawing, not flow charts, but pictures that put things in, like I did for the hub chart, right? I drew a picture. So I think maybe when I take my time off, not time off, but when this is done, which will be the end of the calendar year, putting out all the books that are of Journey that need to go out there.
Yes, Christina,
I feel some graphics coming.
good. You need to
arising.
go into a rest cycle. You need a
Absolutely.
7th day. You
so
need a
aware.
7th day.
I
Right.
was so aware of that for a long time. I have not had a rest cycle since
Cycle.
the winter before Journey landed in
Right.
my lap, when I took 4 months. to
Right.
cook. Yeah. Which clearly was preparation for this kinetic energy.
Okay, I'm going to read to you. I have found it. It's
Great.
chapter 7, and I'm going to read you the whole number 1, so it makes sense.
Okay.
We are at the end of a creation cycle now, and goals have to be either met or adjusted. There are hundreds of years left, but time is speeding up. What's happening now with this particular creation cycle is typical for each one, and what's happening now is acceleration. The bar has been raised for spirit to make itself known through form. At the end of this creative cycle, everything will be evaluated, not judged, as worthy or not worthy before the next dormant period. When the next creative cycle begins, everything, all form, will be reanimated as time begins again. And this time, form will reflect its animator. This has not been the case so far, for form has reflected its programming, not its divine animator. So I had used the word ego, but they use the programming. So
Yes.
I did star that because I thought, wow, okay, so that's the difference then between 3D, even though we can show love, grow love, tap into our love, right? It has been revealed to us who we are as souls and who we are as truth. We're still, I guess, basically animated by the programming, and it won't be in the next creation cycle. It'll be
Well,
the divine.
we are, to the extent that we all are still somewhat, and yet we are hoping that all the deep work we've done of excavating all those programs and bringing them into awareness through the help of books like A Course in Miracles and A Course of Love, have brought us to a place where we may be evaluated as worthy.
Yeah.
And that is not something that's in our control. It's not something worth worrying about, because we know we'll just pick up where we left off. And I think that's what's talked about. So that the following chapter 12 talks about trying to explain this suspended animation, because using the example of cryonics, which science is obviously, people are working on that. They put people in suspended animation, but they've never been able to bring them out. So, you know, it's obviously a good example to give to kind of anchor it. But if we look at the next chapter, I think that's where it talks about what will happen and not to be afraid.
Yeah.
So that's about the Fifth Avenue shopping trip.
Yes.
So
I love that.
and, you know, thinking of Irene again, it really, we always come back to the simplicity of all we're being asked to do, keep living moment to moment as most loving as we can, loving to ourselves and loving to whoever is in front of us, whatever is in front of us. But yeah, that so anybody had a response to that Fifth Avenue shopping trip example of what would happen when time freezes? Boom, time freezes.
Well, it says when we're looking in the window on Fifth Avenue that we will be contemplating, trying to make a decision about what we want to buy. But when we wake up in the, like after that suspended animation, that could be millions of years, we'll be at the point, now you're going to decide what coat, or you've decided to buy a coat. And it uses surgery as an analogy in that, you know, when we go under in surgery, we don't, you know, we're very awake and then don't even realize what's happened until we wake up and don't even know, we just don't even know that 4 hours went
No
by.
memory of it. Yeah.
No memory of it. It's just, so that makes me think, you know, so then I'm thinking of the cycles. And if we're going to wake up at the end of one and still be standing on Fifth Avenue looking at that window, and now no, we're just picking up exactly where we left off. Exactly. And then I said to Judy last night, so does that mean that there's no time? We're living everything all at once, and like the cycles are simultaneous almost. It's almost as if there is no time in between then. But you know, for our understanding, we just said how we can understand it is that cycle of creation, then the cycle of dormancy, the cycle of creation. But that collapses the time, right?
Right. I think a little earlier in this chapter, it talks about, yes, we are, what do they say, that we have the elephant in the room. We know many of you have had an idea drilled into your tiny little heads that time only has a now, and that there isn't a past or present. Well, we can tell you that is in fact true, and it's a very freeing concept, and it is the way to live. However, it does have beginnings, middles, and ends. So it's kind of, it all gets munged together and then opens up again into a movement of time. But it's all still held within that new beginning, I guess, ending and beginning, as Angela said, Omega, Alpha and Omega. But
Yeah,
again, my brain can't get it, really. I just can't. The surgery example was very good. I'm glad you brought that up with me.
I don't know that this fits here, but what popped into my mind was the early stories of Helen Schussman, who loved to shop. And she would go to these to all these stores in New York City looking for one thing, but she would go in and out of stores and bring Bill with her and Kenny Wapnick, and they'd have to shop with her for hours and hours. And then after years of this, finally one day, Jesus said to her, you know, you could just ask me where to go and I'll tell you right where it is. And she went, oh, and she was then ready to do it that way. And you know, not go to 8 stores, and she would just ask, and he'd tell her where it was, and she'd go right to it. And
That's cool.
so maybe that fits in here. That
Yeah, it does.
We're
It
now,
does.
we're still in the 8 stores, you know, and then we get to the point where we said, okay, show us. And then,
Yeah.
it's on that
Yeah.
store. Oh, I only have to go there. Okay.
Right.
And so,
And wasn't it to
Hey.
buy a green coat? Wasn't she looking for a particular coat, a green coat? So when I saw Fifth Avenue and looking in the shop, and then when we wake up and we know what coat I went right back to that story.
I'll bet it
Of-
is, because remember, these things are taking what's in Rick's, so it's in the collective mind and experience
Yes.
that Irene talks about. So of course I bet it is. I'll bet it is.
I made that connection. Well, that
That's cool. I did
connected
not
that.
know that story. I didn't really explore a lot of Helen's background. Thanks, Irene. That was great. That's great.
I have a question. What is the purpose of, if we're going to be going through this dormant period and then wake up and become reanimated, and we won't recognize that there has been any time lapse at all? Why go through the dormant period then? If we're going to be exactly as we were, what benefit did we derive from the dormant period?
Well, Lorraine, when you read that piece, can you find that bit again? Because I think the reason is that we are currently animated by programming and have
Right.
spent lifetimes becoming aware of the programming so we can make different choices, right? Because we have the ego and we fear and all of that was part of the plan, but it got out of control, kind of thing. So we've worked hard on, and so what I think Lorraine read said that when it's reanimated, we will now reflect, what was the word, Lorraine?
We will reflect it, the divine animator. So far, we've only
divine
been
animator.
reflecting its programming.
Right, which is God.
Mhm.
Yeah,
well,
the sentence is, this has not been the case so far, for form has reflected its programming,
Yes,
not divine animator.
exactly.
So what you're saying is that even though we won't, that's what I was going to ask next. If we don't remember, that we will have changed somehow in that.
Yeah.
do you live in the Northeast? Because in the Northeast now, things, the plants and the trees and everything are dying back. So like you leave your flowers on until the nutrients in the flower feeds the new sprout that's going to come up in the spring. But right
Mhm.
now, nothing looks like it's happening, but a
Mhm.
lot is happening
Mhm.
because the flower's dying back. It looks like a dead, but it's not. I mean,
Mhm.
it's dead, but it's not because it's feeding itself. The
Mhm.
nutrients are refeeding the plant so it can rebloom in the spring. So maybe that's what that dormant stage looks like, nothing, but it's a big important something.
So
Mhm.
we will experience, even though maybe not understand it, maybe not even consciously aware of it, there will be, we have maybe our like Lorraine was talking about the ego, they use different term, but maybe our ego, or we'll have an ability to maybe not be in the ego so much.
Mhm. Maybe.
Mm.
Maybe.
But also in the first 7 chapters, it does say that God has to take a rest. That energy has to get revitalized, rejuvenated before it can begin another creation cycle.
Mhm.
So what time are we at? If you would allow me, and I read this to Judy last night because this was a inspiration that I read the other morning, November 27th. So I had already been exposed to that time of dormancy, and it takes about 2 minutes to read.
Mhm.
It's from Mark Nepo's The Book of Awakening. I'm sure some of you, this book's been around for a long time, but I probably wouldn't have understood it if I'd read it when it first came out, a lot of it. So it's perfect timing for me. But this little inspiration piece is called The Truth About Mourning, and I've subtitled it Surrender. And there's a little preface here. There is a vastness that quiets the soul, but sometimes we are so squarely in the midst of life's forces that we can't see what we're a part of. The truth about mourning is that it is the small light of the beginning breaking through again and again. It is a wisdom so large and clear, one which carries us through our lives so quietly and completely that we seldom see it. Day after day, we are covered with the dust and grit of what we go through. It tends to weigh us down, and then we think and scheme and problem solve. Then we worry if it will all really work and if it is the right thing to do. It all makes us dark and cluttered. But despite our stubbornness of concern, we tire and must turn what has happened over to the hammock of night. This is a good thing, for no matter how unfinished we seem, the letting go into sleep is nothing short of a quiet miracle. This letting go into sleep is an innate, reflexive form of meditation, no different than a fly rubbing its face or a doe licking its fawn. Sooner or later, without discipline or devotion, despite our resolutions and mistakes, we each must sleep. We must surrender to the quieting of all intent and regret so that the small light of the beginning can rise in us again and again. There is no escaping this profound simplicity. What happens covers us like dirt. It covers our hearts and minds till at the shore we call exhaustion, we slip into the waters of sleep in a daily sort of baptism so we can begin again. So whenever you feel urgent or overwhelmed, whenever you feel pressed to figure things out or to rethink the unthinkable, rest. So that the endless beginning, which some call the voice of God, might break through what has happened, and you will wake feeling like dawn. That brings it down to our daily 24-hour cycles. So personal, so beautiful, right? Things dawn on me. Well, day dawns on me every day. That's things percolate in me. I don't, and it takes a long time for me to have an aha moment. It has to percolate and work, go right down to my toes and probably lots of sleep. I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and the OMG, that's what that's about. Or, but so
That's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. And so Judy, to what you were talking about, we will feel different. I'm quite sure of it. I don't know it, but I know it. I feel it. Assuming I'm still here, as opposed to banished to some other planet. Because, book 1 has talked about all of this already. Book 1 has talked about how in the next cycle, those who constantly are with free will choosing not for love will not be allowed to return to Earth. Because this is the crown jewel planet. My words, I don't think those words are used in book 1. And it is going to be reserved for this next movement in the creation cycle. So just to put the larger context on it very quickly, it says in this installment somewhere that this is the end of a 2 billion year creation cycle, and how the most recent previous creation cycle focused on animating form into movement. Movement was the purpose of the last 2 billion years of experimentation. The previous cycle was simply creating cellular life, still life. So who knows what this next creation cycle is going to mean to us? We can guess at it. I've got lots of notions from all the things I've absorbed over the last 5-6 years, but we don't know. But I know we will be aware and feel very different.
Mhm.
And
Be
for me,
different.
the other aspect that's so different in this is kind of like another life, but it's not, because we are keeping all of the awareness and growth we've had since birth and going from that platform.
Yeah.
Not coming in as a baby with obviously
Yeah.
greater awareness and
Yeah.
so on, but still having to go through the form developing, body developing and growing into it.
Right.
So I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's
No, but no, that's exactly right. I agree with every word you've just said, Christine. And I think if we want to bring it back to the personal level, Judy, you are different this morning after waking up than you were yesterday.
Yeah.
And so the accumulation of all the days before, but we're interrupted with a rest cycle, a peace cycle, a meditative cycle, where you didn't have to spin your brain and solve the world's problems. But when you woke up this morning, you were one tiny, maybe nanosecond, like Lizzie, one more, I'll use just measurement of being different today than who you were yesterday, from the accumulation of everything that's gone before. But those sleep cycles in between rejuvenated you to begin to see the light, to wake up to the new light. And you needed the energy just to get through this. We had to rejuvenate and rest and restore ourselves to continue today. And that's what we'll be doing in those cycles, as Christina just explained.
Right.
So you're different today, and you're better today than you were yesterday.
And this is more like a quantum leap, is how I think about it.
Yes.
It's like going through a wormhole. It's not the moment to moment cellular changes and visceral changes that are happening in our mind, heart, body, soul vehicle, but a sort of a quantum leap and the soul being fully embodied. That's how whatever fully means, I don't know. But I wanted to, if I may, just revisit book 1. I found the chapter very quickly where we were introduced to these ideas. This was back in last July. I mean, not this July, year ago, July, when Journey Book 1 began coming out. We were being conditioned and softened, but we kind of, probably passed over it. So this is chapter 31 in book 1. And it starts off saying, sound the alarm. The earth itself will not support the human status quo any longer. Well, this is what we've been seeing, right? I mean, the question I wrote for the beginning of that chapter is, are you being kind to the earth and to all life in every form? And that is still the question today, moment to moment. So it says, people who have not awakened, it's using that word, and allowed their consciousness to be changed will not be able to return here to inflict more harm. The earth will only support Christ consciousness. Wow.
Wow.
There will be
Wow.
other options. There will be other options. Nobody's ever thrown away. There are no souls ever thrown away. There is no outside in God. We're all in God. There will be other options for those who need further soul development. And then it goes on about global warming and so on. But I do want to read the other place where it talks about this, which is in chapter 51, which I'll find very quickly here, where it says, there is an urgency to these times. Everything hangs in the balance. So it talks about the resistance to love on earth and so on. Then it says, these beings, it talks about the beings who are still filled with bitterness or whatever, and are not making the choices for love. And this is not a judgment. It simply is how, times when I don't, like yesterday, I'm not able to make that choice. These beings are still currently able to influence the earth's inhabitants, but they will not be allowed to reincarnate here again. They will have to develop in very harsh places where the energy is as difficult as they have been. The earth itself will only support higher level spirit beings. Besides our work with you, this is another aspect of the reclaiming of the earth and the sorting of souls that is going on. So None of this is intended to instill fear or judgment or separation. It's simply choice. And I think in that final chapter of that we were just looking at, of the secrets, didn't it talk about free will? Yes, it introduced the concept of free will right there.
Yes.
Chapter
Yeah.
14, yes. Now is a good time to introduce the topic of free will, which has always been an important part of creation. God decided a long time ago that every single thing would have freedom of choice. So that's huge. It is a choice.
So even though we go through this dormancy period and nothing changes in terms of maybe the way we perceive things, there's going to have been a lot of changes that would have occurred.
Which probably we'll come to recognize very gradually. I mean, it's like waking up from that surgery Lorraine was talking about. It takes a long time to get oriented.
Yeah.
We could be kind of silly and weird to begin with. Or should I say more silly and weird than we are now.
And the final sentence in that piece that you did read from 14 is would have freedom of choice and would be able to decide with God or creation, or to decide of its own volition. Yes. So we always get to choose the journey, the route we're going to take. Yes. It's always freely chosen. Although many of us didn't believe that in the decades that we spent building our own identity, or didn't know that. You know, we believed, obviously all of us have been seekers and believed something, right? But we certainly didn't see that we had chose our destiny. We chose all the things that have happened to us.
And that's huge, to bring that back and really accept that truth. It's very scary. And at the same time, it is so hugely empowering, because if we chose that way, we can choose differently right now. And the power is there, you know. But hey, we're human, so I'll probably be doing that later today, feeling like a victim again. That happens a lot. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just something to be aware of, you know. Yeah. So the prayer I have is constantly, help me see, help me remember, help me notice, you know. Show me, show me, show me. That's the shortest prayer. And I'll add thank you on that sometimes. And sometimes I don't add thank you because I'm pissed off, you know.
Right.
I still want to be shown.
Well, the thing to remember too, Christine, and those incidents or those experiences that made us feel like we were victims of, and who we never would have chose that, but God was right there with us in it. He was with us. That was the grace, because the experience has now, all those experiences, and I've said to you, you've been such a penetrator of so many barriers to get through, but that is your gift in a way, that you're the one that sticks your neck out, whether you wanted to choose that or not. And here you are, such a beautiful soul. I was wondering why my neck is sore.
Seriously, I had a sore neck for quite a long time, especially on the left side here.
Because you're sitting at your computer for hundreds of hours every day. And I know that Deborah's gone, she's a teacher, and then she was online teaching last year, and she developed frozen shoulder, or, you know, the muscles have really seized up from that position. So just a little helpful, not caution, but anyway.
Movement, yes. So we're on the hour, so I invite all three of you to say anything more you'd like to say, and then we can wrap up. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, no, thank all of you. I always find I go away better off. It's wonderful to discuss it, because we can get those things out of our head onto the table or onto others. And I always say 10 brains are better than one, 4 brains are better than one. I always need help to clear up my confusion.
I hope we did a little clearing up today. As he said, we ask a question and then there's more questions, but Irene grounded us beautifully. It is simply about the living experience of love in whatever way we end up there. That is the end point, whether we read about stuff and think about it whether we see visuals and in relationship talk about it, it ends up embodiment, and that's what we're about.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Ultimately, there's only love. Yeah.
Yes, and congratulations on having a whole brain. What Colin and I say is that his half brain and my half brain seem to make things work most of the time. That's all we have. We have half the brain. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Irene, for being here, and Lorraine and Judy. It's been
Thank
a really
you.
good conversation, which I think people who come across this video will appreciate as they explore secrets. So thank you. I love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay,
Bye,
Bye.
Christine.
Bye.
Bye-bye.